Hi, I'm David Bain, and I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Volto customization from a very beginner's perspective. In fact, I expect this to go wrong in lots of ways, but I'm kind of just showing you where I'm at the moment, and maybe it will help others who are beginners. Uh, in a sense, this is from somebody who has a good number of years with Plone, but not so many years with React, which Volto is uh, one of the technologies that Volto is built on. Uh, so let's get going. I'm going to try and cover these points. Generating a Volto app. I think it's important that you know how to read a Volto app in general. And then it's going to get interesting. We're going to see if I can at least show you. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to show you a customization that I did before. And we'll talk a little bit about add-ons, and then I'll share what maybe the next steps are after that. So generating a Volto app. If you're going to get started with Volto, I recommend that you launch the backend. So the fastest way to do that is just launch it with Docker with a command like this. And for almost everything that I mentioned here, you can pretty much go to the official Volto documentation, and we can talk about that. But more or less, if you Google, you're going to come across docs.voltocms.com, and you'll see this as launching the backend. Once you've launched the backend, it will run. And in another terminal, I recommend that you start a Volta project. And starting a Volta project looks something like this. I'll actually show you just a short snippet of how I started an example Volta project. So of course, you're going to put in the project name. And it's fairly straightforward. And then go. Right, so we'll skip that and continue. I think it's very important with any new project that you understand, the lay of the land. You should be able to read the code to some extent. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about 6, 7 with my comfort with Volto, but it's been enough for me to do a little bit with Volto. And it starts by understanding how to read your Volto app. This is the order that I would read a new Volto app. The public folder is the simplest folder, and you'll find your favicon and your robot text, which is important if you're a web developer. You want to be able to customize your favicon, and you want to be able to specify how robots, search engines interact with your site. So that's the public folder, and that's the only thing in there. So we're going to go to the next section, theme customizations, and this is where it gets interesting. If you want to customize your theme, there are little bits of it around the place, and I'm going to jump over to my code so that you can take a little look at, let's see, what I'm talking about. So this code is actually a Volta project that I'm actively working on. And so you'll see you'll see a few things that you may not see in a brand new Volta site. and I'm going to show you what it looks like once I've launched. So this one is already running, but I'm going to start it again, just so you can see the process. So one of the things about, I've used JavaScript for many years, but getting into a modern approach to JavaScript, one of the things you want to pay attention to is that it's going to ship with a client and a server. So what you're seeing here is the client being built, and then the server will be built. And the client interacts with the server, and the server will act as a proxy to our Plone backend. So there we go. And we have our server. Great. Let's head to localhost 3000. And this is my Volta site. Now it's a little bit customized. And this is because it's for a project where we are implementing Volto. So if you compare it to the default Volto theme, there are a few things that are a bit different. Let's see if I can show you really quickly what's happening there. So I'm sorry, I'm actually going into the wrong place right now. I should be going into customizations. Okay, so I should probably just look at my own presentation. So source customizations is where you can do overrides. And in this example, the overrides that I have done happen to be for the logo. I could replace this logo with another logo. I actually do have another logo. So let's see if I can grab that logo quickly. I can remember where I downloaded it. Downloads, documents, code. Okay. I actually don't remember where I put the logo. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab another logo really quickly straight from the internet. That's probably the fastest way to do this. And I'll say save image as, and I'm going to drop that logo into my demo at the right location. So in this case, it's going to be on the source, customizations, components, and here's my logo. I'm just going to overwrite this logo. And what will happen is it actually hot reloads and drops in my logo. Okay, there's actually pretty good documentation at docs.voltocms.com on how to replace a logo. The other customization that I made in this example was customization of the search box. And let's look at the code that was done here. I'll have to apologize a little bit because I'm literally just jumping back into this code after about a week or two. Okay, so in this case, we're now looking at the theme folder. So if you look back at the presentation, another area that you want to read is the theme folder. And here is where you can make a lot of your theme customizations. And the way it works is that the theme is broken up into different folders which represent different aspects of the theme. And if there is additional theme work that you need to do, you would put it in a folder called extras. So in this case, what I'm interested in is actually the search bar. And I'm actually not remembering where I made those changes, but you can see that there are files called overrides throughout the theme folder. So with a little bit of searching, I was able to locate where we did our overrides for the search box. Okay. As you can see, we've changed the border radius, we've changed the background color, and we've done some customizations to the button. And the result is what you see here. Similarly, we made some changes to colors in the, okay, thank you. Similarly, we made some changes to colors, and this color is a little different from the standard Volto colors, and those were also changed inside of the overrides here. In this case, we have a value called red. That value is actually overridden in my globals, I believe. I think, wait, let's see. I believe we have our own custom version of red. Okay, I'm not finding that. Again, a lot of this information can be found at docs.voltocms.com. Okay, so we're going to look at the next section, which is add-ons. But before I do that, I want to mention sourceconfig.js. For me, sourceconfig.js is very important. And if you're coming from the Plone world, it's comparable to reading the configure.zcml file because it gives you the lay of the land. So let's take a quick look at sourceconfig.js. It's a good way for us to get started and also looking at add-ons. So under, oops, that's not sourceconfig.js at all. Or is it? Yes, great. All right, so in the sourceconfig.js, the most important thing is a function called apply_config. All of this is generated for you when you generate your Volto project. And the apply_config allows you to manage the configuration settings. So these settings are the settings that influence your Volto site. For example, you may want to specify a backend which may be different than the default backend, which is usually localhost port 8080 when you're developing. So for example, during development, I would have pointed to a different location for my Plone site, in which case I'd have to add this dev proxy to API path. Volto has something called blocks, and those blocks are the components that build out your site. And you can create your own custom blocks. So in our case, we have created some blocks. Some of this is a bit of an experiment, and so won't act perfectly, but this is a block system. I got some help from a pretty good Volta developer, Nicolas Zambello. We spent a little time going through this in his spare time, and we got to this so far. Important thing here, just for those who may not be big into JavaScript, these three dots is a spread function. And basically what we're doing is we are extending the configuration of the blocks. And what we do is we bring in, using the spread function, all the blocks configuration, and then we add a new block, which is our special block. So what happens is that in the end, config blocks config will be extended with this additional block. And in this case, this is the tabs block. I'll show you what the tabs block does, and then we'll take a little peek at the code. So I'm going to just click Edit. This would be a good time for Edit to work. Let's refresh the screen just in case. Okay, now we got our edit. Okay, so what can we do with that tabs block? First of all, let's see that tabs block in action. Here is the tabs block. And we are going to add some content, and that content will become a tab. And we're going to add some more content. Actually don't have any more content, so let's add a call to action. Learn more about this thing. Great, and as you see, we have our tab there. Let's add another tab and see what happens. Just because we only have one, I'm just going to add this again, but I'm going to change the call to action this time. You may have come across, right, there you go. And finally, I'll add one more tab. Of course, these could have been three different pages, and each of them would become a tab. So let's look at the code really quickly and see how we got about to do that. Again, start by reading config.js. Under here, we have defined an icon, and in our code, that icon informs what shows up here. We've also added it to a group called common. So if you go under common, you'll see it listed. It also happens to be out among most used just because it happens to be most used. We can specify the view and the edit view. At the moment, the display view is still a work in progress, but the edit view is called tabs block edit. Let's see where you would find that. So under source components, we have tabs block, and we have an edit.jsx file. That edit.jsx file controls all the editing experience. So for example, I may want to change this into English to say add tab. And when I save it, it should hot reload, and Hold on, did I add an error? Sorry. Right, so now it should hot reload. And instead of saying the Italian version, it's going to say something else. So now it says add tab. So I can add my tabs. I can then add my content and so on. Great. So the other thing that I want to show you, and this is a little advanced, I'm still learning. It's not super advanced, but because I'm on the learning curve. This particular tabs block actually has a dependency. So you'll notice that it includes something called the edit block. This is using a pattern called subblocks. And that's actually an add-on. Because it's an add-on, it's going to be something that we need to install with our code. For us to do that, we use Mrs. Developer.json file. This is basically the Volto version of Mr. Developer. And we just point to the URL for our add-on, and that's how we bring in Volta subblocks. When we check out our project, we run yarn, and yarn finds Mrs. Developer, pulls in the dependencies, and so on. So, yeah. So that's a little bit about theme customization, about add-ons. So what's next? Where would you want to go with this? I would say I have found it useful to learn a little bit more about semantic UI because that's one of the building blocks of Volto. And I've had to kind of dust off my React knowledge. I did learn a little bit of React in the past. And now that I'm kind of diving into Volto, I've had to dust that off and just understand the bits and JSX and things like that. One resource that I can recommend is Awesome Volto. And you can literally just Google for it. So I'll do that. Let's head over to Awesome Volto. I already have it in my search results. Basically, Awesome Volto is a great place to discover new things happening with Volto. And if you're building something new with Volto that's useful to the community, you can probably submit it to Awesome Volto so that it can get some notice. Thank you for your time. I hope my bumbling through a little bit of Volto will help to enlighten you a bit about Volto. And I'll hand back over to the Plone team.